Oh, hello, everyone. I have not been live in so very, very, very long. I do want to make sure that I am live before I get going. I know it's really cliche when you first start a live stream that the streamer starts. Yeah, it looks like I'm going. That's exciting. I'm just gonna. It's like a weird loop. It's me. Okay, so that was amateur hour primo. Anyway, happy holidays, everyone. We just had Christmas. I was here in Washington D.C. for that, and I had a absolutely lovely time with my girlfriend. I spent a little bit of time back home seeing some family in Texas, and I'm super grateful for that as well. In general, in the last 6 months or so, I've been doing something that makes me extremely grateful, which is seeing people that I truly care about. So I went and saw my dad for a period of time. I saw a cousin. I went to his wedding, and I went a little bit ahead of time and got to meet his fiance for the first time, but actually spend some quality time with them. And then I went to my sister's wedding in Colorado. I've done so many just my mom had surgery. I spent time with her in Tennessee, um, and made sure that she recovered well. And yeah, then at the holidays, I went to a family Christmas event and I saw a bunch of people I cared about. And that's really what life's all about this time of the year. I hope you're getting to do the same thing. So, now that we've gotten a little bit into this live stream, I did want to get straight to the point. Why did I quit my job? Uh, so, I left my job as of July 1st, I believe, July 3rd, or was it June 3rd? I lost my train of thought or my exact date. I left a job in Washington, D.C. at the German embassy. So, for those of you who don't know, I moved to Washington, D.C. in 2017 to do a master's degree at American University. And um, I got a master's in political communication. It was a mix of public policy and communication theory. That went on top of my poli sci bachelor's degree. And in that study portfolio, I also did quite a bit of graduate level history. And when I left the graduate program, when I finally graduated, I had to make a choice about what to do next in my life. One path was here on YouTube. I had been doing pretty well, making a little bit of money here on YouTube, but it was inconsistent. And I decided to go look for a big boy job after grad school. What do you know? I didn't decide to get a PhD and go on to academia. I started applying. Um, and what I found was a job at the German embassy here in Washington, D.C. I lived in Germany a couple of years. One of former partners of mine is German, and she helped me to learn the language while I was living there, for which I'm eternally grateful. And there was this job posting for the German embassy in Washington D.C. for a press officer, and it. Oh, thank you for the comment. Your video on the Siege of Madrid was the best documentary I've seen. It gives me chills to this day. Oh, I appreciate it. I just uploaded another video on Spain. I tend to get chills in a different way when I watch that video. I cringe a little bit because it's a little old and I'm a little self-conscious about it. Okay, I'll try not to get distracted by comments. You'll notice that I haven't live streamed in a while, and so this is kind of how it goes for me. I promise I'm sincere, and we'll get to the point. So, the job at the German embassy was for a press officer with a specialization in social media. And the thing about the job was it was like, we need you to have a background in political science. We need you, which I did. I had an MA and a bachelor's degree. We need you to be able to speak German. Well, I did. And they didn't say like you need to be like native speaker. They just said you need to be able to participate in meetings, which I could. They said, we need you to have a knowledge of German history. Well, I had uploaded a lot on YouTube here and I'd taken courses on history, and yeah, I had that down. I had a love for Berlin in particular and for German history. Its story as this society which was on its knees at the end of World War II. It was an absolute moral catastrophe, and the way that it rose to be a liberal democracy in our current age was so impressive to me. I thought it was one of the great stories, and the way that Germany faces its history in a way that perhaps Japan doesn't, I found inspiring. So check that box. They wanted somebody who had pretty good writing skills and a little bit of background in news journalism, which I had done an internship at Meet the Press at NBC during graduate school. So I had that box checked. There was a few other things, but the basic point was like, it felt like the job description had been written for me personally. And so I applied and I got the job. And when I got into the job at the German embassy in Washington, D.C., yes, it was on the grounds of the embassy. It was with a bunch of German diplomats. And the basic premise of the job was we have a lot of diplomatic messages. Public diplomacy is what it's called in the industry. We want to get these messages from the German language into the English language in a way that is in comportment with the standards of communication and mass communication on social media of our current age. And so I took the job and I had a great time. And pretty soon into the gig, I found out that what a lot of I would be doing is actually writing things for the ambassador herself at the time. So the ambassador was named Emily Haber. She was ambassador from, I believe, 2017. She started not long before I started at the embassy, and she went through the pandemic. And she had the credentials from Donald Trump, and then eventually attended the inauguration of Joe Biden. And I got to write in her voice. It wasn't just on social media. We did a mini documentary on the 30th anniversary of the German reunification, Wiedervereinigung. And so I got to write really sensitive communications for her. One of which, one category of those was when it came to talking about the Holocaust and the sorts of big anniversaries. The way that Germans approach their history in that way is, I think, extremely precise and respectful. And so I got to write things for her on those topics. And then when Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a lot of really intense communications that went on during that period. And it was some of the most, I hate to look back positively on the moment when a country was invaded, but it was some of the most rewarding work that I ever got to do in my career, because I got to say things like Ukraine's destiny is not for Russia to decide, right? And then those things would appear sometimes in the ambassador, under the ambassador's name, of course, in big newspapers. Now, I should be very careful about how I word this. The ambassador speaks for herself. We propose things for her to say, and she makes the final decisions. And so, I learned pretty early on in that job that, for example, Ambassador Haber liked to speak with a lot of factual precision. She didn't like to use superlatives. It was an amazing opportunity, and I absolutely adored the work, and I'm so grateful that I had that chance. And I was actually at the German embassy for 5 years, doing everything from Facebook posts on avocado vocabulary to, like I said, writing some of the most important communications of my career regarding Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Germany's support for Ukraine. And for that experience, I'm deeply grateful. I got to meet a lot of diplomats. I got to kind of see what it's like to work at a foreign embassy in Washington, D.C. It turns out that it has a bit of glamour to it, but it's also just an office. And there's good and bad people within an office, any office, and there are good and bad diplomats. There are, industrious and lazy bureaucrats, right? Like everything under the sun exists in these spaces. And the fact that I was able to have a bit of stability in my life after all that travel, the fact that I was able to have a decent salary, they kind of made salaries to be competitive with what you might get if you had worked at a federal, like a U.S. federal government level. And of course, the health insurance was pretty nice. So the Germans tried to create a health insurance plan in the private market here in the U.S. that kind of mimicked what you would get in Europe. It was pretty cool. Yeah. I see a comment here asking if I'm with my German wife anymore. We did separate amicably, but thank you for asking. We didn't do a boomer divorce. We did a friendly millennial divorce where everybody had a good feeling leaving, as devastating as it was. There was no using lawyers to split the family dog in two and that sort of thing. And she's still supportive to this day. So yeah, I ended up finding my time at the German embassy to be a bit of a dead end. Now that sounds really negative, but I think it's the same situation that you would find if you were a local hire at any foreign embassy. The diplomats are the ones that are in charge, and the diplomats are the ones that move up. And a local hire who's not a national of that country, which I'm not German, you're pretty much pigeonholed into the role you have. You can stay in that role for the entirety of your career. right? I could have been writing tweets and things until the end of time. And there, there's a couple local hire positions that are a little bit higher up on the chain, but really there wasn't much of a true career path there. And I think if anybody's curious about what it's like to work for a foreign embassy as a local hire here in Washington, D.C., the answer is that it's a lot of fun, but it's not something that you should be thinking about doing even medium term. I think that was the mistake I made. I ended up doing it for 5 years. I probably should have done it for 2 or 3, because ultimately there's not going to be advancement. I don't know if that's true at every single embassy, but I did talk to a lot of local hires. I talked to people who worked at the British embassy, people who had worked the Spanish embassy, the Israeli embassy, the French embassy. I have really good friends who worked at the French embassy. I mean, you name it. I got to meet them at certain points. And as far as I can tell, that's kind of the status quo at all of the embassies. And so it can be a little frustrating, right? Because my boss, who was wonderful, when she first arrived, wasn't familiar with the things that we did. She was a very competent woman and learned quickly, but ultimately it was like training the person who would then tell you what to do. And we've talked openly about it because it's not like a big secret. It's a little frustrating for the person who's like in that space. And so I see a question here about what are my plans going forward. So about 2 years ago now, I started realizing that I needed to move on from the embassy. It might have even been 3 years, right? You start to feel that your time is up. So at first, I did look into other embassies. I looked to get a promotion at the embassy I was currently serving in, the German embassy. I looked at other jobs all over the country. I even looked at a pretty prestigious nonprofit in New York, and I was oh so close to taking it. But I realized a couple things. One is that I was tired, and nothing was like super inspiring to me at the moment. And the second thing was I kept thinking about this platform, and I kept thinking about my writing in general, desire I have to put words on the page, chase my curiosity, and find a way to pay my bills that way. It's this dream I have, and I know it's a little naive. So what I decided to do instead of taking another job was to kind of hunker down a little bit at the embassy and save some money. And the goal was to leave. Fast forward to June of this year. I'd already put in my notice months before. Everyone was already aware of what I was going to do at the embassy, and we're supportive. We're still on great terms because I kind of told everyone, like, I see what this is. There's been lots of frustration. I see what this job is, and I'm going to eventually walk away, and I want to do it on good terms. And the reason I can make it such an open-ended sort of timed thing is because I'm going to try to go self-employed. So my final day at the German embassy here in Washington, D.C. was on June 3rd. I posted something on LinkedIn describing my time in more detail, but I walked away. The ambassador had switched. It was getting to that point where some of the diplomats I was working with were going to start rotating to other positions. It was the right time. It was also the right time because I was no longer doing my best work. And one of my values in life is to, give it my all. That's not to say to be a perfectionist. Sometimes I do sort of borderline get to the perfectionist level that can be damaging to my mental health. But, more important, I just want to do my best work and give my all. And I just wasn't doing that anymore. So what am I doing? Well, I am here on YouTube. I've been giving it a serious go kind of in the background. If you've been following me on Patreon or on Substack, you'll know that I have been I've been getting some consulting. I've been meeting with some friends who are also content creators, and I've been trying to create more consistency here on YouTube. And let's be real, if you were to go over to the tab on YouTube and look at my uploads, you would see inconsistency, and you would see it dating back to the time I returned to YouTube in 2021. So when I first got my job at the embassy, I took a long break, and when I came back, my view counts were just never the same. That's okay. I mean, that's just the nature of things. People forgot about me, and that's just how it goes. I made choices in life. The struggle that I've had since returning is that I have this core audience, and if you're watching this, you're probably one of them who is engaged with everything that I upload. And it used to be that the audience that would do that was something like 20,000, 30,000 at a minimum, right? But I had plenty of videos that cracked into the hundreds of thousands, even the millions, and that was a relative basis for making some decent money. And I hate to talk about it in such crude ways like money, because I do have values that I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a YouTuber, if you're going to be on a platform like this full time, you have to have consistency. And what I found when I returned to doing this in a serious way is that I didn't have consistency. And so I'd have an upload where I'd get, 150,000 views, 400,000 views, amazing. Um, and in my opinion, there weren't like steep quality drops, but rather just some videos just flopped. And maybe as I've gotten older, I've kind of lost touch with what people really want to see. And so if you go through my content library, and I mean, I can open it up right now and look at it, but I mean, I don't, I kind of got it in my head burned in, right? I have my last upload on Spain, 2.7 thousand views. Explainer on Germany, 21,000. Antarctica, my last 3 videos ago, 5.9 thousand. Now, prior to that, I had a couple that did pretty good, 100,000 on my Gibraltar video, 158,000 on Ireland, but then go back a couple more, Hong Kong, we're talking about 3 and 3,000. So this is not a complaint. This is just me saying that there's an inconsistency there. And if you're a YouTuber and you're going to sell sponsorships, for example, you need to be able to tell a sponsor, hey, like, there's no view count guarantees, but like, here's the range, right? And it's a little complicated for me to go and say, well, you might get 1 million views or 500,000 views or 2,000 views, right? Like that's such a huge, such a huge, like, what's the word, range that you basically can't book sponsorships it that way. So part of what I've been doing in the last 6 months is trying to balance that out. And based on what I just said, you see that it's still proving to be a challenge for me. But that being said, I already mentioned I've seen people I love, and I'm grateful for that. So this is absolutely not a complaint. I'm also very thankful for the fact that I've had the opportunity to do things like give this a shot, right? I'm 34, and I wanted to give myself a chance to do writing full time before, it became like an impossibility in my career. I've also covered topics and done them at length that, I wouldn't have done before. So yeah, some of them are a little kooky. I did one on animal rights and, understandably that one flopped. But I did a video that integrated some interviews on Washington, D.C. I came back to the Brexit thing. I hadn't been doing that in a while. And I started to really get this through line burned in my brain that what I love to create is videos that either touch upon themes that are important today out of history, or I just like to start at the current event and then find a way to contextualize it through history. And I absolutely love doing that. And I started to do it on Substack as well. So I'm gonna put up a little banner, not to be a goofy promo guy, but I did start a Substack. I got a few thousand followers over there. You're welcome to join. If you DM me, tell me you watch this live stream, I'll comp you for a couple months or something. You can come join. If you'd like to support me on this next journey, I also have my old Patreon, patreon.com/WilliamCFox. Appreciate you letting me plug things a little bit here as I go on this new journey in life. So I've been writing things that maybe I think aren't going to perform that well, or just a little bit more rambly there on my Substack. I wrote a long meditation on citizenship back a couple days after the election. I shared a bunch of books that I had read on the Spanish Civil War. I just uploaded a list of books that I read in 2024. I uploaded a little explanation about Elon Musk's intervention in German politics, and I've had a blast. I think I like writing. I'll be real, because you guys are my core. I like writing more than I like creating videos. And so when I do write, I make a video because I think it's the best way for me to get my writing out there in a way that maybe my writing's not good enough. People don't want to read it alone. So sometimes I feel like the visuals are for me to like create a crutch. And also YouTube is a platform where, yeah, you can really pop. And so it's worth it because you have that chance of, almost like slot machine style. I have a couple comments that I want to get to. What are your plans going forward? I just answered full support. Thank you, Simon. Glenny, is that Glenny? I have my glasses on, but these are my replacement glasses. I left my proper normal glasses on a Southwest flight to Dallas, Texas. If you are a flight attendant from Southwest and found a pair of glasses that you think belong to me, leave a comment. Do I think AfD will win? That's the alternative for Deutschland, the alternative for Germany. Currently, the Populist Party. Whatever, we could talk about definitions about what they really are, will win, or SPD CDU will prevail. I think the answer is that the CDU will prevail, and that Friedrich Merz, as our fellow countrymen will call him, will win the election and will form a government. The real question As of the polling data that I saw like a week ago, the only question is, will the CDU be able to form a government as a single party with maybe like one partner? For example, you mentioned SPD, so Olaf Scholz party, the current governing or large partner in the governing coalition that just collapsed. Will CDU be able to just form a coalition with a single partner, or will they need two? And the reason that's such an issue is because the vote is splitting further and further in German politics. So the alternative for Germany is polling somewhere between 18 and 20%. Admittedly, I haven't looked at the polls in a couple days. I haven't looked at the effect of the poll since Elon Musk started his intervention in German politics. But the chances are pretty strong that a more traditional party will win. And then the real question for German politics become, can that party deliver? It's the same conundrum that the mainstream parties are facing in the United Kingdom right now. So the Labour Party was elected, a landslide, a plurality vote, and a huge majority in Parliament. And the question, really, the only question that's relevant in the UK parliamentary period right now is, can the Labour Party under Keir Starmer make enough positive difference that people actually feel it? After 14 years of conservative government, whether you like neoliberal policies or you prefer something on the center left or you prefer something somewhere else in the political spectrum, the only question for mainstream Democratic parties in the UK was, can they deliver something? Germany is in a similar quagmire right now, except it's a little worse because Germany has been dipping in and out of recession. The UK has continued to grow, albeit extremely small bits. Germany's actually dipped into recession a couple of times. And the three parties that made up the coalition government right now are all seen as ineffectual. And that's a little bit unfair because they've done some interesting things in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. They weaned Germany off Russian energy. But I think the general perception of Olaf Scholz, the chancellor of the Social Democratic Party, is that he's he's just so aloof and so technocratic that it's almost preposterous. And yeah, the job for the CDU returning to power will be, can you make a difference so that populist parties don't see a giant surge of popularity for the next election? Is it possible that the AFD actually gets the most votes in this election? I guess. I haven't looked at the polling data in about a week. Surges are possible. There's still like 2 months left. I think it's February 23rd is when the elections are. I mean, anything can happen. But I do think that a mainstream party will prevail in this election. However, that being said, I'm really bad at predictions. France. Interesting in France because that the prime minister that was selected by Macron was not able to pass his budget. And I'm actually not an expert on French politics, but I have been keeping up a little bit with my friend who's a diplomat or was a French diplomat, and of course reading some articles about it. I think the main issue for France is that Emmanuel Macron, and I know this is going to sound like almost like non-analysis, but Emmanuel Macron seems to be at his core an egoist, and he seems to have a bit of a savior complex that has not served him well. The most stunning example of that was the elections we just saw, when in EU parliamentary elections, the Rassemblement National, the National Front, surged. And a lot of times EU politics can be a way to protest your domestic national politics. And so, you could just write off the surge in EU Parliament as potentially just a bit of frustration, warning signs for Macron's party. And instead, he called an election, and it didn't work out. The Popular Front ended up getting the most votes after a bunch of the most seats after a bunch of crazy rearranging. And I do think that the chaos in French politics can be laid at Macron's feet. And I think that if populist parties end up doing better in the next round of elections, whenever they are, again, I'm not an expert, so I don't know off the top of my head when they are, but I think he has no one but himself to blame for that happening. Reform UK impact you think they'll have on the United Kingdom? If that's all right to ask. Totally all right to ask. Reform UK is a fascinating party. For those of you unfamiliar, it is the child, so to speak, the newest iteration of the UK Independence Party, which was the party that advocated for the Brexit referendum, led by Nigel Farage. I remember one of the first UK elections that I covered here on the channel. The UKIP party was on the debate stage with David Cameron and Ed Miliband and the lady from Plaid Cymru, whose name slips me, but whatever. They were up there. And David Cameron ended up, you know, putting a vote to Parliament to put Brexit on a ballot, on a referendum. Once that had happened, and the UK was in the process of leaving the European Union, then Nigel Farage morphed that into something called the Brexit Party. And the point of the Brexit Party was very, simple. It was like, get Brexit done, which ended up being Boris Johnson's slogan when he ran for Conservative leadership, and then when he called a general election in 2019 and got a majority. Okay, that's a lot of background. The Reform Party is morphed in a different way now. Reform Party, in my opinion, is not just about Brexit anymore. I think that's pretty obvious. It's not like some magical insight that I have. They put out an actual party manifesto at the last general election. They picked up, what was it, 1, 2, 3 seats? Someone can write in the comments. One of them being Nigel Farage, who's now an actual member of parliament after trying multiple times. And I think the first past the post system in the UK has served mainstream parties pretty well. In this last election, Labour won a huge majority in parliament without winning a huge majority of the votes. And that's because in a constituency in the United Kingdom, you just need the most votes, not the majority of votes, to win that seat. All that to say that the first past the post system defended the mainstream parties in the UK in the last general election. Will it do the same in the next general election? Well, that all comes down to what the Labour Party does, because as you've probably noticed, and the reason you're asking, Reform UK is looking pretty great in the polls. And the real question is that a genuine political movement to supplant the Conservative Party? Or are people just pissed? And could people be less pissed if, and I know in the UK vernacular, pissed means drunk. So let me change that. Angry. Are people just angry? Or are they really going to vote for Reform UK in the next cycle? I think that if the Conservative Party is not ready to have a combination with Reform UK and basically let Nigel Farage in their party, I do think that Reform UK has a good shot at winning a lot of by-elections and causing a lot of headaches for the mainstream parties. However, I do think that that would cause a galvanization in the same way that we saw the French left and center galvanize to work together to keep the far right out in France. I realize the political system in France and the UK are very different, but the dynamics of trying to vote against are the same. And the reality is that the UK hasn't had a strong vote against the right cycle. And so I think that that card has yet to be played in UK politics and could be played in the next election, even if people are angry at Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. But that is a long time from now. The Fixed Term Parliament Act says that another election won't be held until what, 2029? Something like that. I mean, they have forever, assuming they don't just completely collapse and there's a vote of no confidence. That's unlikely. And so, again, I hesitate to say unlikely. I mean, politics is a long time, and 5 years in politics, and British politics particularly, so much can change. What's your opinion on the nuclear shutdown dumb move? In Germany, I assume you mean. Yes. Yeah, I think Germany's general disposition against nuclear energy is very strange. It seems very knee-jerk. And I know that when Angela Merkel was doing her book tour recently talking about nuclear power, that it was a very bizarre, she brought up Fukushima in Japan, and I think it's logical that the people in various countries would have a bit of a bad feeling about nuclear power after something like that. But okay, let's be real. There's a bunch of nuclear power plants on the French border. So it's not like the French border is some magical place that prevents nuclear catastrophe from coming over onto the German side. Now, Germany is in a pinch because they relied too much on Russian energy. They had to wean themselves off of it, and they're feeling the pain. And I think I just was listening to who was the vice chancellor, Robert Habeck. I guess he's still the interim vice chancellor during these elections, from the Green Party, saying, well, we have to keep coal plants on because, as much as we want to reach our climate goals and have this energy transformation, right now we're effed. We need power, and all of our companies are suffering because of high energy bills. And one can't help but think, had Germany not just been so aggressive in getting off nuclear energy, they wouldn't be in as bad of a situation. Now, if you're asking me about the relative pros and cons of nuclear energy, I think it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But yeah, I think that there's an ideological opposition to nuclear energy in Germany that I find perplexing. It's not as though people are like, here are the pros, here are the cons, and then they talk about it on TV. It's just like, no, nuclear energy bad. And it's a pretty mainstream position, right? You have everyone from the Green Party to Angela Merkel's center right party, the Christian Democratic Union, saying no, no, no. And I don't know Friedrich Merz's particular position on nuclear energy, but I assume that, considering that he's probably trying to be everything to everyone in this election, that he isn't making any grand promises to bring back nuclear power. And of course, anyone knows that you can't just like flip a switch and turn on new nuclear power. That takes a long, long time. Okay. Keep the political questions come. That's kind of fun. I get nervous when people ask me questions because I'm afraid you're going to ask me something I really don't know. So I wanted to say that I'm really grateful for the opportunity to even be here talking to you guys, and to have the chance to quit my job and have a chance to try something new. I quit my job to write, and this is a transparent pitch for you to support me however you can. If it's just watching this live stream and engaging with me, wonderful. I am grateful that I had the chance to have a job at the German embassy in Washington, D.C., and were there a chance to ever be promoted, I probably wouldn't have left and would love to go back. There's frustrations in any office, and I definitely played into some of the culture there that wasn't always wonderful, but that's just any workplace. And I'd said what I'm doing now, I'm doing lots of writing. I'd like to work on a book, but I really was hoping to get a financial basis before I took the time to write a book. But you can see a lot of my writing on Substack. And I think that that's a place to engage with me. That's not on YouTube, where you can hear from me more often. I've been posting, 3 or 4 times a week. Well, let's say 2 or 3 times a formal post on Substack a week, and then, lots of notes. And I'm very accessible there. I'm very accessible on Patreon. Let me share my Substack link. There we go. I did want to talk a little bit about, I know I'm going to see the number drop here. I'm not really looking at the number of people streaming, but that doesn't matter. I wanted to talk a little bit about my eating disorder journey, which I know can be a little bit of a shock when somebody just says, hey, let's talk about eating disorders. It can come off as oversharing. But I uploaded a video about, 6 months ago now, around the time I left my job, actually, about my journey as a man getting eating disorder treatment. And the reason that I want to be open about it is because I want other men to know that it's okay to struggle and to seek help. And it's one of those things that I'd like to carry forward as I continue to create content here and on Substack. I want, it's not that I want to make videos about eating disorders, but more like I want to be open about my mental health journey, because as I'm getting older, I'm noticing the despair in our society. And I think it's a particularly acute problem for men. And I want to be part of the solution. And so it's really important to me to be open about my struggle, not talking about all the different details, but just to say that I have struggled and I want other people to seek help when they can. And in that same vein, 2025 for me in terms of content, some of it's going to be just things I think can get clicks, but I also want to take time in 2025 to write and to explore themes about being a better individual, about being a better citizen of your country, and about being a more, let's say, cosmopolitan person, about the smallest and the biggest. Aristotle called us political animals. I want to explore the ways in which we can be political animals from the smallest unit, the family and the individual, to a larger society. I'm a values-driven person, and I say that my channel is about putting good information into the world through storytelling. And so I will be pursuing that more in 2025. If I am able to keep this little gig going, then maybe 2026 as well. And on that note, I wanted to just, first I want to invite anyone who has any more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I also wanted to make a note about just kind of stick a pin in the idea of a imperfect journey in life. And I don't know all of you personally. In fact, I don't know if I know any of you personally. And I don't know the sort of things that you go through in life, but I've gone through some difficult things in the last years of my life. And I've continued to work while I've been suffering. And unlike some of the glamorized portrayals of hustle culture and of, using your suffering as an artist to make better things and more interesting things that will appeal to people. That hasn't really been the case with me. I've simply pushed through and got things done when I need to get things done as much as I could. And the reason I bring it up is because at this time of the year, people can be a little distraught and depressed, right? Like Christmas is wonderful. I personally love Christmas, but that week between Christmas and New Year's can be kind of depressing. It can be kind of tough to sit with your thoughts and think about your next year and think about where you've been in the past 12 months. And so for any of you that are on a mental health journey or a career journey or struggling in any way, I just want you to know that you're not alone at this time of year, and that if you are suffering, that you're not alone. That's not to say that your suffering doesn't matter or that it's just can be added to the pile of the grand suffering of the world. That's not the case at all. It's just to say that I'm telling you that I've suffered and I've worked, and life doesn't stop just because you're having a tough time, and that might be the same thing that's going on for you. And the way that I've helped myself as this has occurred to me is by thinking about people around me. So instead of thinking about how can I make life better for myself because I'm having a tough time, I think about how can I go see family that I care about? How can I make those around me have a better life or flourish, suffer less? And when I externalize my suffering into the flourishing of others, I've found great relief. You don't want to focus on the flourishing of others for selfish reasons, but there are dividends. There are things that come back to you when you do kind things for other people. So text that person that you've lost contact with. If your parents are still alive, give them a call. If your grandparents are still alive, give them a call. If you can do something nice, donate to a cause. If you're financially able, do that. And I think that the reason that this is important is because there's an artificial separation between us and the people around us. We are a product of our environments, and the way that we internalize ourselves and say, I have a bad life or things aren't going well for me, it's actually, I'm kind of losing my point here, but it's not real. It's, hey man, it's not real. No, what I'm trying to say is that if you're worried about your impact on yourself and you're worried about your impact on each other, on other people, that's the right way to think about life. Because in the end, we are all interconnected. And that is my high sounding monologue for the day. Happy New Year, zombies 1, 2, 3, 4. You have a great night too. On that note, I wanted to just wrap up by saying that I care about you, about myself, and about those around me. And I hope that you are thinking in those terms as well as 2024 rolls into 2025. I quit my job at the German embassy, and 6 months into the journey, I don't know if it's going to work out or not. But I'm grateful to be here giving it a try. And I'm grateful that we could spend this time together and that you would listen to me explain this journey that I'm on, and you would consider providing support if you're able. Whether that be just leaving a comment, as many of you have done, or going over to my Substack or to my Patreon to pledge financially. If that's not possible for you, don't worry about it. I totally understand. And like I said, I'm just appreciative to have the opportunity to give it a swing before I'm too old to give it a try. So keep an eye out for exciting things in 2025 from me, be it on Substack, writing, here on YouTube, content. I can tell you the first video of the year is going to be about North Korea. And yeah, I will live stream again. Whether or not this journey works out, I will be back to talk to you guys more often. And maybe it won't be so personal. Maybe it'll be about some, big picture, broad audience things that are appealing to people. Happy New Year to you too, Nicole. I know you're killing it out there as well. And I'm really happy that both of us were able to make some changes this year. So everyone, consider following me on Substack. Consider joining me on Patreon. Consider doing a creative project for yourself this year. And I will see you all in 2025. Thank you for listening. Heads held high. Happy Warriors. Later, y'all.